Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, the podcast where indie authors get personal, sharing insights about their books, their writing journeys, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt, and I invite you to join me for engaging conversations with both debut indie authors and seasoned veterans. Whether you're looking for your next great read or a bit of inspiration, you've come to the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Nate Oxman joins the show today to talk about his debut middle grade novel, The Philly Phenoms. It's a heartwarming story about a father and son connecting through golf, family loyalty, and one unforgettable charity match. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. Nate Oxman is an award-winning writer and educator who was born and raised in the Philadelphia suburbs, where he currently lives with his wife and 3 daughters. He received his bachelor's degree in journalism from Penn State University and his master's degree in teaching secondary English from Slippery Rock University. He has been the staff writer for the Tri-State Golf magazine since 2010 and a teacher in the school district of Haverford Township since 2012. He's also worked at the famed Marion Golf Club since 1995. You can learn more about Nate Oxman and his work at thephillyphenoms.com. Well, hi, Nate. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, first of all, I love the title of your book, The Philly Phenoms. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And tell me a little bit about, tell me what the story is about and your inspiration behind the story. And then I kind of want to hear how you arrived at the title as well.
Sure. So, the story's about a 10-year-old boy named Lee Lomax who gets bitten by the golf bug bad. It's all he wants to do. Doesn't want to go to school. Doesn't want to do his homework, doesn't want to hang out with his sisters. All he wants to do is play golf. In the summer, he even turns the fields at his elementary school into a driving range and a little golf hole, tries to get his friends up there to join him. And that's successful for a little bit, but then one by one, they kind of get tired of playing golf. They want to do other things, but not Lee. That's all he wants to do. So then eventually he's old enough where he's able to go to his dad's local country club. You know, it sounds fancy, the phrase country club, but it's really blue collar. And it's based on the kind of blue collar country club where I grew up playing. So he spends some time there. He has a few run-ins with this old crotchety member named Hal Rustin, who kind of plays the role of the antagonist. He's out to get Lee and his family, doesn't like them one bit. So Lee battles through that a little bit. And then he stays home sick from school on 9/11. And he watches that unfold. He's home by himself. And then eventually it's announced that the Red Cross is going to stage some exhibition golf matches around the country to raise money for the victims of 9/11, their families.
Yeah.
So Lee finds out that one of those matches is going to be at their club. It's going to have the club champion from that summer and the head professional against 2 PGA Tour professionals. And when Lee knows this, all he wants to do is to find a way to get his dad to compete in the club championship so he can earn that spot and play in this huge exhibition match. And these Red Cross exhibition matches actually took place during World War I, and I think during World War II, when the kind of PGA Tour shut down and, you know, some of the professionals went to fight, but they didn't have enough money to stage these big tournaments. So the Red Cross staged these exhibition matches around the country, and different PGA professionals would go around the country and raise money and play at like local clubs. So,
wow.
Yeah, that's the story in general. So as long as Lee can get his dad to participate in the match, you know, it's going to be epic. He's happy.
I love that. You got to admire his determination.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
he's a determined kid for sure. So the title just kind of fell into place. I knew I wanted it to have some alliteration in it, and then I kind of weaved the title into the final scenes. I also knew I wanted to have Philly in the title, and it kind of just fell into place.
Yeah. And I love the phenoms because that's,
Yep.
everybody's kind of cutting off words these days,
I know.
so it's perfect. It's modern. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you. I was a little worried that it was going to limit the audience a little bit, but so far so good. The book's doing well.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank
So
you.
you talked about golf playing a symbolic role in the story. Does a lot of this hit home with you, or like, is any of this based on personal experiences?
Yes, great question. A lot of it is based on my childhood. And my dad, is a golf obsessed guy, and he taught me how to play when I was 8 years old. So the country club in the book is based on our real place, like I said. And then a lot of the events in the book are based on things that happened to me when I was a kid. So it was cool to kind of do a little reflection and think about some stories that I could pull into this book. And again, I think I did a good job.
Yeah, yeah, sounds like it, yeah. So now do you have a son?
I have 3 daughters.
Oh,
3
nice.
daughters, 12,
They can
Anna.
play golf. Yeah.
Yes, yes, they'd play. If I bribe them with, like, fountain sodas and driving the golf cart and maybe some ice cream, they'll get out there and play a little bit with me.
I love it. Now, the story is rooted, like you said, in a Philly neighborhood, and
Mhm.
it feels really grounded and tight knit. Why was that the right world for this family and their struggles, which we'll talk about soon?
Yeah, good question too. Number one, I think that's just because that's what I know. I grew up in the Philly suburbs, so I know that. And I'm a teacher too, right in the same school district where I went to school and where my kids go to school. So it's an area I know really, really well. And I could paint the picture for the readers just because of my childhood and, being in the same place, most of my life.
Right.
Um, and then I guess it just kind of, allowed me to create those characters too, friends I had when I was a kid, some kids that I taught. I kind of pulled, from as many different experiences as I've had into those characters and into the setting.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It sounds like just talking to you for just even a couple of minutes now, like you really had a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, it was a definitely a lot of work, but I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't fun. I'm a teacher full time. I have 3 young girls, 12, 9, 5. And then I have a side job. I work at a golf club called Marion Golf Club here in the Philly suburbs. That's one of the, top 10 golf clubs in the country. So I have two pretty much full-time jobs, parenting, teaching, and then a part-time job. So then writing comes after all of that. But I've had this story in my head for a while, so I'm glad I was
Yeah.
able to get it into a book. I took a sabbatical from teaching 2 years ago to get my master's degree and to finish the book.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I'm always in awe of authors that, because most work full time. I mean, let's
Right.
get real, right?
Yep.
But finding the time, I guess, if it's something you want to do, you're going to find the time and you're going to make the time.
Yep. Exactly right. A lot of
Yeah.
late
Yeah.
nights, a lot of early morning wake ups.
Right, right. Now, Lee is only 10 years old in the book, but the story tackles some really big emotional themes. What made you want to tell it from his point of view?
I think because I've taught third grade, I've taught fourth grade, and I've now taught sixth grade for the last 10 years or so. And one of the things, especially after COVID, that I've noticed is that kids seem to lack grit and perseverance, and I wanted to kind of put that into Lee and show that the reader that these are traits that will help you get through school, help you get through life, help you get through sports, anything that's thrown at you. If you can have grit, if you can have determination and perseverance, you're going to do great things. And that's something I've always taught my students. And again, after COVID, I've really noticed a drop off in that. So I wanted Lee to present that to the reader and for hopefully the readers to grab some of it from him.
Yeah, yeah. Why do you think that? Are we just more protective or
Yes, I
yeah,
think, mental health is a big factor in that. And,
yeah.
the more students that, you see with anxiety and diagnosed anxiety, the more that you're just willing to do anything you can to help them. And it's hard to know when to push them and when to kind of be more receptive and be more loving. So there's a delicate balance there. But I think mental health's a big issue. And, that probably comes from social media, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, for sure. It's a different world than
Yeah. Yep. Big
yeah.
time.
Now, of course, Lee's faith in his father is a driving force in the novel. Tell us a little bit about their relationship and what it says about the power of belief within a family.
Yep. So on the dedication page in the book, I think I wrote to my dad that he was the only role model I've ever needed. And that's so true. He was the best man at my wedding. And for as long as I can remember, all I wanted to do was spend time with him and do whatever he did. He was a basketball player, so I started playing basketball. He was a golfer, so I started playing golf. He was a caddy, so I started caddying. He used to read the newspaper, so I started to read the newspaper. And that's how I, became a writer. So it was easy to create that father son bond.
Hmm.
And, kind of that unwavering bond, like you said, about belief, where, you know, I have faith in my family. They're the most important people in my life, and that's kind of transcended into my own personal family with my wife and my three kids. And I think if we can have a kind of foundation where you believe in each other and support each other, you can do great things and get through tough times. So I leaned on that heavily and just forged that relationship between Lee and his dad, Sam, in the book, again, based on my relationship with my dad.
Yeah. Wow, what a you were talking about your relationship with your dad, it gave me chills. I mean, really, your dad, your best man? Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah, we've got to
Yeah.
spend a lot of time together, and he still plays a ton of golf. He's in his early 70s, but I've been fortunate enough with my connection through Marion Golf Club to get invited to some great places around the country, and I've taken him with me, so we've had a lot of great experiences in golf.
Yeah, yeah, sounds like it.
Yep.
Now Sam is the dad, and
Yep.
he gave up golf for his family. How did that decision shape kind of the emotional heart of the story?
Yeah, I wanted to add that into the story because, if these two, this father and son, were just playing golf all the time together, I didn't think it would, be as compelling for the reader. So I needed to
Mm,
figure out a way for the dad to get pulled away from the golf course so that when eventually, if he does participate in this club championship match that could qualify him for the big Red Cross match, that it would be a tough decision for him to make. Should he be by his family's side, or is it okay to step away and participate in this match and do something that his son really wants him to do? So that really drove me to kind of have some doubts about whether he should play golf, whether he should get back into the game after a little bit of a hiatus to raise a family and to earn a living. And I think that it worked out well.
yeah, wow. Lee, he walks a line between innocence and
Hmm.
but very insightful.
Yep.
How did you go about maintaining that tone throughout the book?
That's again based on, I think, who I am. And I've always been kind of like an innocent, observant kid who just kind of sat back and watched everything take place. And I think that's helped me in my writing career. So I leaned on that. And then again, since I have so much experience around kids as a teacher and around golf, that I leaned on that insightful part, just being able to kind of be reflective and think about things is a trait that I somehow I've been given. So that ability to kind of reflect and think about, every decision and how it affects other people is something that's helped me throughout my life. And again, just like the grit that I talked about before earlier, I wanted to instill in Lee for the reader.
Right, right. Now you also got a bad guy. You
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
him earlier, Hal Rustin. What does he represent in the story?
I had this character in mind at first, and I think I did the best job of shaping him than I did any of the other characters, just because it was so easy to do. I don't know why it just came naturally to me. I mean, maybe it's because it's based on some people that I grew up around when I was a kid. Not everybody is warm and fuzzy at a country club. You have so many different personalities coming in. So I was able to pull some things from people that I met. And I really wanted somebody to battle Lee. And I thought it would be interesting if it wasn't a peer, right? If it wasn't another 10-year-old kid. So
Right.
he's, a 55-year-old man. And I just thought it'd be interesting to make him the antagonist versus someone Lee's age. And I think it worked out well. The scenes in the book where they have run ins are my favorite.
That does sound interesting, adult versus child,
Right. Yeah.
that's setting that antagonist up for a lot of haters. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's what I tell people. I was like, once you learn about Hal Rustin, you're going to love to hate him for sure.
Yeah. I think that's why it's sometimes easy to write the bad guys. There's a level of entertainment too, just in the writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that got me through the tough times. If I was writing late at night, I had really enjoyed, making this guy as evil as possible. He's not sinister evil, but he's just looking for any way to kind of get this Lomax family out of his country club. He thinks it's his. He thinks he can tell anybody he can what to do.
Right. You've got some humor laced throughout, and then like we said, you've got some deep subjects too. The moment when Lee watches 9/11 unfold on television is deeply affecting. I mean, I can still remember when I saw it,
Yeah.
unfold. What was your approach to writing from a child's perspective on such a traumatic real world event?
Hmm. I wanted to incorporate some kind of historical fiction element in there. Originally, the story was more kind of like the movie Sandlot, but for golf. And
Mm,
then I read this book by John Strigi called When War Played Through, about these exhibition matches that the Red Cross staged during World War One and during World War Two. And that just, the light bulb went on. I said, I'm going to use that and tie it into 9/11 and have, the experience of 9/11 told through a kid. So that was pretty easy to write. The research, wasn't hard at all. And I wanted to make it kind of as real as possible, without
y-
being scary, right, for the reader.
yeah, yeah. So, did you see it happen, or is that before your time, or?
No,
Eh,
so I'm 44 years old. So I was in college. I went to Penn State University, and I remember I was asleep, and one of my friends knocked on my door, and I answered, and he said, "You turn on the TV, like planes crashed into the World Trade Center." And then, well, we had like 10 of us down there watching just for
Mm,
hours. So I,
yeah,
I had some of that in my head too.
yeah. Good to have that
Yep. That visual,
reference,
right? Yep.
And I love how you pulled in that 9/11, the Red Cross, the charity match.
Hmm.
Sounds like it plays a pivotal role in the plot.
Yep.
And, it's also good to bring that historical element into stories for kids,
Yeah.
that middle grade. I think there's not a lot of middle grade fiction that I don't think that does that.
Yep. For sure. Yep. I agree.
You've got to make history entertaining,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
know.
Or kid. Yeah. There's a very, very few kids who are into history. So if you can give it to them in historical fiction, I think you have a chance.
Right, right, for
Yep.
sure. Yeah. So, I mentioned there's a delicate balance between like
Hmm.
humor and heartache. What is the key to writing those moments that are both emotionally real and then genuinely funny?
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I really tried to do was paint a picture for the reader and allow the reader to visualize what's happening, whether it was a funny moment or a sad moment. And one of the things that we try to do, my wife and I as parents, is just to keep it as real as possible for our kids. So,
Mm,
celebrate the good things, and reflect on them, but not celebrate the bad things, but reflect on, unfortunate things that happen in life. And again, like I talked about, understanding that you can bounce back from setbacks and you can push through adversity. So those two things drove me, to touch some kind of heartfelt moments that might be hard for the reader to get through. But, again, hopefully they're learning moments too.
yeah, yeah. And those are the moments, like those quiet, powerful
Yeah.
moments. Was it difficult to make those moments effective? Did,
Yes. That was the hardest part for sure. Because I've been a journalist, for so long. The only writing I've done is mostly sports writing, although I covered kind of general news and features when I was just out of college. So it was really hard for me to do that. My editor at Atmosphere Press helped me a lot. I still don't think it's perfect, but I definitely did the best that I could.
yeah. Is this your debut novel?
Yeah, yeah, my first one.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Originally, my first goal was just to get it published. And then I was like, okay, it'd be cool if I won some kind of award. So I won an award a couple weeks ago. And now, I hope that it'll kind of parlay into other books.
Yeah,
See what
yeah.
happens.
I've seen a lot of positive reviews. Now, you just mentioned the award, and a lot of reviews say your writing feels warm and real. And that is hard to do in the dialogue. And it's not easy. It's not just, oh, I'm going to go write a book.
Right. Yep.
So, I guess what makes a character or a scene feel real to you? And how do you draw that out so the reader feels like, they're there in the
Yep.
story?
I think, it's interesting that when I taught solely English in sixth grade, and toward the end of the year, the kids read Sherlock Holmes' book, Hound of the Baskervilles. And the first paragraph is just insanely hard to understand what the heck is happening. And I used to read it aloud to the kids, and they'd be like, what? You could see it on their faces, right? What the heck is happening? And then I read it two, three, four times and break down kind of every word and phrase. So I had that in mind because I wanted to do the opposite. I didn't want the kids to be bogged down by analyzing every single word and phrase the author used and have to read and reread and reread, because they do so much of that in school. So I
Right.
was able to kind of keep it real by just reminding myself that I'm going to make the language as simple as possible. And even though I was a big reader, my vocabulary is, decent in size. I don't think I have the capability to write something at Doyle's level, obviously. So it was easy for me to keep the language simple as long as I kept reminding myself, okay, you don't want the reader to have to ask Siri what this word means, or it's probably not a
Yeah.
thesaurus in most houses anymore, but on the computer it might be. So I just kept thinking to myself, okay, make it simple, make Lee speak the way that a 10-year-old would speak. And as the narrator, that became easier and easier the more I got through the book.
Right,
Just
right.
reminding myself, hey, this is a 10-year-old kid. He's not going to use language that a 10-year-old wouldn't know.
And the language has changed since Doyle's time. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, big
if
time.
he were to put that book out today, it wouldn't be a classic, you know?
For sure, for sure. There are a lot of instances in the book where like there are hyphenated words that aren't we, took away the hyphen or changed in some way.
Yeah. Now, another thing that you do well, and I know it's because you know golf, but it's so central to the story, and yet it still feels accessible to readers who aren't into the sport. How did you write the game in a way that anyone could connect with the game and the sport?
So again, from my teaching background, we focus a lot on context clues and giving the reader a synonym or an antonym or explanation or description around the unknown word to help them find the meaning of that unknown word. So I did that whenever I introduced a technical golf term that I didn't think readers would know. So I leaned on that heavily, making sure the context clues were crystal clear because, like you said, I wanted kids to read it whether they've never picked up a golf club before or whether they've been playing for years. So that was something that was in my head the whole time I was writing too, especially in the golf play-by-play parts.
Yeah, yeah. And the way that you write it could, influence kids. Hey, mom, dad, I want to try golf, you know?
Yep, yep, for sure.
Yeah. Readers come away with a sense of hope even after the tougher moments. Was that sense of hope something that you intentionally included?
Yep, and that came from my experience as a teacher too. So we read some tough stories, I would say, whether they're short stories or novels in sixth grade, and although there is a glimmer of hope at the end of most of them, a lot of them are tough. So we read a Holocaust book, we read a narrative nonfiction book about the assassination of Lincoln and the pursuit of John Wilkes Booth.
Mm,
The Hound of the Baskervilles has a lot of darkness in it.
yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that if there was, a sad or a difficult moment in the book that I included, some positivity after it. That was definitely a driving force too.
Right, right. What kind of feedback have you had from readers? Anything that surprised you?
So a few years ago, I met a guy who used to be a AP correspondent. He's probably in his 80s. And I told him that I was working on a book. And he said, when you finish the manuscript, send it to me. I'm known to be, a completely brutally honest critic. So I sent it to him and he read it. And then he called me when I was like on my lunch break at school one day. And for lack of a better phrase, he ripped it apart.
Oh
So
my
I was
gosh.
like, oh my gosh, what the heck have I done? I spent so much time on this book. I've just created something that nobody's going to want to read, nobody's going to want to publish. And then he gave me some great feedback. He wanted me to, do a better job of helping the reader visualize and creating these characters and making some really memorable scenes. So I went back and I got rid of a lot of the golf stuff that I didn't think worked. And I spent more time on developing the characters and
Mm,
painting a picture for the reader. So it couldn't have really happened, in a better way to kind of lead me to where I was with the final product. And the feedback has been great. Again, even after he said that, I still thought I would get, some negative reviews. And I'm sure they'll come, but for the most part, things have been positive, has been great. Obviously, you don't want
yeah.
negative feedback. So it's just nice to know that you did something that people enjoy, right?
But even the negative feedback, like, this person gave to you, his goal was to help you grow
Right.
and
Yeah.
better your story.
Yeah, he didn't
So,
tell me to, I think you should bail on this project. You're right. And
right.
that's something that I've tried to do throughout my life is, take something like that and use it to make myself a better person or make my teaching better or my writing better. And that's again something to teach the kids, right? You
Yeah.
can, you're going to have setbacks, you're going to have adversity. What are you going to do? You're going to back away, you're going to quit, or you're going to push through it.
Mm-hmm. That was incredibly brave, by the way.
It was
Sending it
tough.
to.
It was, yeah, I knew it was coming because again, he's an honest guy and I didn't really know him that well, so I didn't think he was going to just candy coat it for me, and he didn't. Um, but I was definitely, biting my nails, waiting to hear back from him. And then when he called me and he was like, "I'm going to be honest with you," and he just went right into it, I was like, "Okay, there's a lot to work on." But he did praise, the golf scenes, and he said you didn't kind of bog the reader down by too much golf talk, and he really liked the way that I described the golf scenes for the reader. So he's like, lean on that when you're describing the characters and creating these characters. You
Hmm.
don't want too many
Okay.
flat characters. Make them, as round as possible.
Right, right. Did he reread the final or no?
He hasn't yet. I'm going to see him in a couple weeks this summer. We go on vacation in the same spot, so I'm going to bring him a book and show him. I haven't talked to him since purposely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Scary and a little exciting and nice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, all of those things.
So you mentioned maybe more. Will we see more of Lee, or will you work on a different type of book entirely or a different subject?
Good question. So I think there's probably more with Lee. There definitely will be more of Hal Rustin. I thought it'd be cool to do a golf book, kind of like choose your own adventure, which I don't know how many authors do these days, but choose your own adventure related to
Oh,
golf, I
right.
think would be cool. And then I'm working on the biography of a former PGA Tour pro who I've gotten to know through my job at Marion. So that'll be the next project. And then I'll probably get back into some middle grade fiction
Okay.
stuff.
Wow. A bunch of different avenues. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, this story of this former tour professional who played against Tiger Woods, and the big names in the 90s and 2000s kind of fell into my lap, and it's been great working with him. So hopefully I'll be doing that in the next year or two.
Okay.
Things come
Well,
slowly with me because I have so many jobs and so many kids.
right?
Yep.
Well, you're determined though, like Lee.
Yep,
Yep.
that's right.
Or Lee's determined like you, right?
Yep, exactly.
So, do you have a website where readers can go to learn more?
Yep.
Yep.
So it's the
Okay.
phillyphenoms.com. There are links, to the Amazon page where you can buy the book. There's some more information about me in there. And I'm going to build it kind of as I go here and add some resources for kids. If parents are looking for some summer reading work that has some worksheets and other things with it, that won't be too torturous for the kids, I'll have them up soon. So the phillyphenoms.com has a lot of more information.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, Nate, is there anything else you wanted to add today?
Yeah, one more thing that I really enjoyed with the project is that it turned into a collaborative effort that I wasn't anticipating. So there's a member at Marion Golf Club who I've gotten to know really well who does some painting on the side. And once I started looking at his art, I said, I'm going to ask him, he might say no, but I'm going to ask him to paint the cover for me. So the cover was done by him free of charge, and it turned out amazingly. I really, really am happy with it. And then there's a golf course map in the book the reader can use as a reference that's in there before chapter 1. And that's done by a former colleague of mine at the golf club who got out of the golf business and is now doing golf artwork. So he's a little bit still into the business. He's doing artwork full time. So he sketched the course map. And then I had another guy do the logo for the fictitious course in the book. So all those guys helped me make the Philly Phenoms what it is now.
Nice, nice. Well, I love the cover as well. Great
Thank
job.
you.
Perfect. Yeah. It takes a village, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I haven't been able to do anything myself in my life. I've always had somebody to lean on. So this is another example.
Well, Nate, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing a little bit about you and your work.
Thanks so much, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today for my interview with Nate Oxman, author of the Philly Phenoms. You can learn more about Nate and his work at thephillyphenoms.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.